Bambi and Sierra's names are all over social media right now, and the reason is simple. There's talk about certain receipts that could shake Kirk Frost's career to its core. When fans first heard the whispers, they thought it was just another typical love and hip-hop storyline. But as clips, screenshots, and cryptic captions started surfacing, the air got thick with tension. Sources claim Bambi and Sierra have teamed up on something that doesn't feel like petty revenge. It feels like a calculated strike, and the target is Kirk's entire legacy. Insiders say the material these two are sitting on, if made public, wouldn't just shatter audience trust, it could erase Kirk's credibility inside the industry overnight. Now the question is, are these receipts real or just a publicity stunt? Fans are divided, producers are holding emergency meetings, and behind the scenes, the cast is locked in a silent Cold War. If this turns out to be true, we might just be witnessing the endgame. The whispers had been building for weeks, but nothing could have prepared anyone for the sudden storm that hit the love and hip-hop circle. It started small, almost like background noise, a couple of cryptic posts from Sierra, a few carefully worded captions from Bambi, and some shady emojis that fans immediately began dissecting. But in the last 48 hours, the energy shifted completely. There was no mistaking it anymore. These two women were not just stirring the pot. They were about to serve the whole kitchen on fire. The story spilling out in group chats, blogs, and private DMs was that Bambi and Sierra had gotten their hands on something they were calling undeniable proof. No one knew exactly what that meant, but the way it was being described had everyone convinced that Kirk Frost's reputation was dangling by a single fraying thread. People close to the situation claim the tension started long before the so-called receipts even existed. Bambi had been quietly clashing with Kirk for months, her patience wearing thinner every time she felt he was stepping over boundaries with people in their shared social circle. She kept it contained at first, swallowing her frustration during public events and trying to smooth things over for the sake of appearances. But there were moments, little slip-ups at parties, overheard comments during filming, that made her question everything. And then there was Sierra, who had her own complicated history with Kirk. They weren't close, not really, but they ran in overlapping circles. And when she saw certain patterns in his behavior, she started paying closer attention. It was almost like they were keeping separate mental scorecards, tallying up incidents without even realizing they were headed for the same explosive conclusion. According to one insider, the turning point came during a late-night after-party. Everyone was relaxed, the cameras were off, and the wine was flowing. Kirk was in a corner, having what looked like an intense conversation with someone no one recognized from the show. Bambi noticed, but she didn't step in. She just watched, her eyes narrowing as Kirk leaned in, laughing in a way that didn't sit right with her. Later that night, Sierra would tell a friend that she saw the exact same exchange and thought, this is gonna be a problem. Still, neither of them acted on it until weeks later, when pieces of a bigger picture began to surface. The first piece came in the form of a video clip. It wasn't clear where it had been taken, but the quality was surprisingly sharp for something, shot on a phone. It showed Kirk and the same unidentified woman from the after-party, this time in a setting that looked very much like a hotel lobby. They weren't doing anything overtly incriminating, but the body language was undeniable. Close, relaxed, familiar in a way that raised eyebrows. Bambi apparently got hold of the clip through a mutual acquaintance, and when she saw it, her stomach dropped. She could have ignored it, chalked it up to harmless conversation, but the look in Kirk's eyes told her this wasn't just casual. Sierra's contribution came not long after. She had been keeping tabs on certain social media accounts, and one day she stumbled across a post that seemed completely unrelated, until she read the caption. It mentioned being flown out, staying in the best suite in the city, and being treated like a queen by someone whose name was never revealed. The post was vague enough to mean anything, but the timing lined up perfectly with a weekend Kirk had been on business in another city. Sierra started digging deeper, and it wasn't long before she connected the dots. A mutual friend confirmed, off the record, that the woman in the post was the same one from the after-party and the hotel clip. This was the moment Bambi and Sierra realized they weren't holding separate pieces of gossip. They were holding a puzzle that, when put together, told a damning story. They started talking more, comparing notes, piecing together timelines. The more they compared, the worse it looked. There were hotel receipts, text messages, and even voice memos that hinted at conversations Kirk would not want anyone outside, his inner circle, to hear. They didn't rush to release anything. Instead, they played it smart, keeping the evidence close, letting the tension simmer until the timing was right. Behind the scenes, word started to spread among the cast. You could see it in the way people looked at Kirk during group scenes, the way conversations shifted when he entered a room. Some tried to stay out of it, claiming they didn't want to get involved in petty drama, but others couldn't hide their curiosity. And while Kirk seemed oblivious at first, those closest to him say he started to get suspicious when he noticed Bambi and Sierra speaking more often, sometimes breaking into laughter when he walked past. The first real hint to the public came during a live interview Sierra did for a local radio station. She was there to promote her latest business venture, but halfway through the conversation, the host asked about recent cast drama. Sierra smiled, leaned forward, and said, "Let's just say some people aren't who they pretend to be on camera, and when the truth comes out, it's going to change a lot." The internet lit up instantly. Within hours, fans were flooding her comments with guesses, tagging Kirk in shady memes, and dissecting every word of the interview like it was a legal deposition. Bambi's play was subtler but no less effective. She posted a single photo on her Instagram story, a shot of a man's hand holding a hotel key card, the kind with a room number written on the envelope. No face, no name. But the watch on the wrist was one fans had seen Kirk wear countless times. She deleted the post after just 3 minutes, but by then, screenshots had already made their way to every major gossip page. Now, the speculation wasn't just online, it was in the air at every filming location, at every event, even in private production meetings. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just petty shade. This was a coordinated effort to put Kirk in a position where he would have to answer questions he couldn't easily dodge. And with every new whisper, every new cryptic post, the sense of inevitability grew stronger. Something was coming, and when it landed, it would be impossible to ignore. By the time the second week rolled around, the atmosphere within the love and hip-hop circle was thick with tension. Every interaction felt loaded, every glance had weight, and it was becoming harder for Kirk to pretend he didn't know something was brewing. The problem was, whatever Bambi and Sierra had, they weren't dropping it all at once. Instead, they seemed to be feeding the fire in small, perfectly timed doses, keeping both the cast and the audience on edge. It wasn't just what they had, it was how they were using it. Producers were quietly split on the situation. Some thought it was brilliant television. Real or not, the anticipation was pulling huge engagement numbers online. Others were worried about the potential fallout, especially if the story turned out to be based on something deeper than just speculation. Either way, everyone knew the cameras had to keep rolling, and with every scene, it became clearer that the dynamic was shifting. Kirk, once quick to insert himself into conversations and take control of situations, was starting to hang back. He spoke less, avoided direct confrontations, and kept his phone on him at all times, as if bracing for bad news to drop at any moment. Bambi, on the other hand, was thriving. She wasn't just hinting anymore, she was making it personal. One evening during a casual group dinner, she waited until Kirk made a joke about someone else's relationship before leaning back and saying, "It's always the loudest ones with the most to hide." The table went quiet. Kirk tried to laugh it off, but the twitch in his jaw said he knew exactly who she was talking about. Sierra smirked, sipping her drink, and the two women exchanged a glance that spoke volumes without a single word. Off camera, the situation was even more intense. Sierra had apparently gotten her hands on something new, a string of voice messages sent late at night. They were short, casual, but the tone was familiar, almost intimate. She didn't outright say who the voice belonged to, but the implication was clear. When she played one for Bambi, the two reportedly sat in stunned silence for a moment before bursting into laughter. Not the kind of laughter that says this is funny, but the kind that says, we know exactly what to do with this. The receipts were growing. Photos, videos, messages, timelines, even eyewitness accounts. But the brilliance of Bambi and Sierra's strategy was that they never dumped everything at once. They let the speculation work for them, allowing fans to fill in the blanks with their own theories. It got to the point where Kirk couldn't go anywhere without someone side-eyeing him. At a recent public appearance, he was seen glancing around, nervously, scanning the crowd like he was expecting someone to shout something at him. Social media became its own battlefield. Bambi posted a clip of herself walking into a boutique, the caption reading, "Getting ready for the big reveal." Sierra followed it up a few hours later with a mirror selfie and the words, "Some people's truth is uglier than their lies." The posts weren't tagged, no names were mentioned, but they didn't need to be. The comments were flooded with Kirk's name, and gossip blogs began stitching together their own timelines, complete with arrows, screenshots, and conspiracy-style graphics. Meanwhile, some cast members were getting nervous. Rasheeda, who had been staying unusually quiet through all of this, was reportedly avoiding group filming days whenever possible. One crew member claimed she had walked off set during a break in filming after overhearing Bambi and Sierra laughing in the corner. "She doesn't know what they have," the source said, "but she knows it's not going to be good." Behind closed doors, Kirk was doing his own damage control. He reached out to a few people he suspected might have been talking, to Bambi and Sierra, trying to figure out what had been shared. In some cases, he offered to clear up misunderstandings. In others, he outright asked for loyalty. But the problem was, too many people were already invested in the drama. Some saw it as their ticket to more screen time. Others just wanted to watch the chaos unfold. The most telling moment came during a small private cast gathering at a lounge. Kirk showed up late, wearing a forced smile, clearly determined to act like nothing was wrong. For most of the night, he avoided Bambi and Sierra entirely, focusing instead on casual conversations with other cast members. But at one point, Sierra walked right up to him, leaned in just enough for the cameras to catch it, and said, "We've got what we need." Kirk froze. It was only a split second, but it was enough. Fans caught the exchange in the background of a video posted online, and within hours, the clip had gone viral. That moment changed everything. Suddenly, the speculation wasn't just about what the receipts were, it was about when they would drop. Fans started predicting the exact episode, some even making countdown posts. Kirk, on the other hand, was growing more tense with each passing day. Every time his phone buzzed, he checked it instantly. Every time Bambi or Sierra posted something even remotely suggestive, his name trended again. Producers finally decided to lean into the drama. They arranged for a group scene that would put Kirk, Bambi, and Sierra in the same space with nowhere to hide. The setup was simple, a celebration for another cast member's project, but everyone knew the real purpose was to see if sparks would fly. From the moment the three of them were in the room, the air was electric. Sierra kept her eyes on Kirk. Bambi kept her comments sharp, and Kirk kept looking toward the door like he was planning his escape. The night ended without a full-blown confrontation, but it was clear the tension had reached a boiling point. Whatever was coming, it wasn't going to be subtle. And if Bambi and Sierra's smirks as they left together were any indication, Kirk had every reason to be worried. The atmosphere around the cast had completely shifted. What used to be playful shade and surface-level drama was now a thick tension that everyone could feel the second Kirk walked into the room. He had become noticeably more guarded, almost like he was bracing for impact every time the cameras turned on. Whispers about the so-called receipts Bambi and Sierra were holding weren't just gossip anymore. They had taken on a life of their own. Fans on social media had started tracking both women's every move, looking for clues, dissecting every post, every emoji, every cryptic song lyric in their captions. Backstage, before filming a dinner scene that producers had been hyping up, for weeks, crew members reported that Kirk arrived earlier than usual, pacing in a quiet corner with his phone in hand. He was on edge, asking questions about the seating arrangements and whether Bambi and Sierra were confirmed to be there. It was obvious he wanted to control the environment as much as possible. But the truth was, the environment was no longer his to control. When the camera started rolling, the energy in the room was immediately electric. Bambi was seated on one side of the table, leaning back in her chair with the confidence of someone who knew she had the upper hand. Sierra, just a few seats away, kept her phone face down on the table, occasionally sliding her finger along the edge as if reminding Kirk it was still there. At first, the conversation stayed light. Business ventures, upcoming events, harmless jokes. But the producers knew this wouldn't last. They were waiting for the inevitable shift, and it came sooner than expected. "You know," Bambi started, her voice casual but her eyes locked on Kirk. "Sometimes people think they can control the narrative forever. But there comes a point when the truth refuses to stay buried." The table went quiet. Even the background chatter from nearby tables faded. Kirk didn't respond right away. Instead, he took a slow sip from his drink, setting it down with a deliberate calmness that didn't match the flicker of anger in his eyes. "If you've got something to say," he finally replied, "say it. Because all these little hints and games, they're just noise." Sierra tilted her head, a small smile curling on her lips. "Oh, it's not noise," she said softly. "It's a warning." Those words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Rasheeda shifted uncomfortably, glancing between them. Fans who later watched the leaked clip swore you could see her grip tighten on her napkin under the table. She didn't speak, didn't defend Kirk, but her body language told a story of its own. She knew something was coming, and she didn't want to be in the middle when it hit. The rest of the night was a game of subtle jabs. Every time Kirk spoke, Bambi would lean over to Sierra and whisper something that made them both laugh. The cameras caught Kirk glancing their way more than once, his expression darkening with each look. And then came the moment that had fans rewinding and analyzing frame by frame. As dessert was being served, Sierra casually reached for her phone, unlocked it, and turned the screen toward Bambi. Whatever she showed made Bambi's eyes widen before she broke into a slow, knowing smile. Kirk froze mid-bite, watching the exchange. "You think this is funny?" Kirk asked, his voice low but sharp enough for the mics to catch. "No," Bambi replied. "I think it's justice." By the next morning, fan pages were flooded with theories about what was on that phone. Some swore it was a video, others believed it was a string of damning messages. One particularly wild rumor claimed it was a financial document tying Kirk to a secret investment that went against everything he had built his public image on. Meanwhile, Kirk was doing damage control behind the scenes. A close source claimed he was meeting with producers to discuss narrative adjustments for the season, hoping to shift the focus away from Bambi and Sierra's accusations. But the problem was, the momentum had already left his hands. During a radio interview just days later, Bambi was asked point-blank about the receipts. She leaned in, smiling at the host. "Let's just say," she teased, "when you see them, you'll understand why we said it's over." The clip went viral within hours, and the hashtag #It'sOverKirk started trending on multiple platforms. Sierra fueled the fire by posting a photo of herself with Bambi, both of them holding their phones with captions about Truth Season. The comment sections were a battlefield, with fans demanding Kirk respond, others begging for the receipts to be released immediately, and some defending him, claiming it was all a storyline for ratings. On set, things were no better. Kirk's usual allies were starting to keep their distance, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Rasheeda was polite but noticeably detached during scenes with Bambi and Sierra, sticking to neutral topics and avoiding eye contact whenever the subject of the truth came up. But it wasn't just about what was happening on camera anymore. It was what was brewing off camera. Producers had been quietly filming extra confessionals with Bambi and Sierra, encouraging them to speak more openly about their motivations. While they didn't outright reveal the receipts, they dropped enough breadcrumbs to keep fans hooked. One of Sierra's most talked about lines came from one of these confessionals. "Sometimes people get away with things because everyone's too scared to speak. But we're not scared anymore." This line struck a chord, sparking debates across fan forums and group chats. Who was everyone? What exactly had been covered up? And how deep did it go? Kirk, for his part, began to look visibly worn down in later episodes. His once confident posture seemed replaced by guarded body language. He avoided lingering in group settings, and there was a heaviness to his interactions with Rasheeda that hadn't been there before. The cracks in the image were starting to show, and Bambi and Sierra seemed content to let the anticipation build. Then came the trailer for the upcoming episode, which sent fans into overdrive. The 30-second clip showed a heated exchange in which Kirk stood up from a table, pointing across at someone off camera and shouting, "You don't know what you're talking about." It then cut to Sierra in a confessional, smirking as she said, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about." The screen went black, and the words, "next week," flashed across. By the end of that day, the conversation wasn't just about whether Kirk's career could survive. It was about whether this was the beginning of the end for his time on the show entirely. The days leading up to the next filming were unlike anything the cast had experienced before. It wasn't just drama anymore. It felt like an actual countdown. Crew members whispered in corners, the sound techs exchanged knowing glances, and the producers walked around with the kind of quiet excitement that only comes when they know they've got something that will shake the show to its core. Rumors of what Bambi and Sierra were sitting on had exploded beyond the set. Blogs, gossip sites, and even mainstream entertainment outlets were picking up the story, framing it as the biggest threat to Kirk's public image in years. Kirk had tried to keep a low profile, limiting his appearances and avoiding social events with other cast members. But even in his absence, his name was everywhere. Some insiders claimed he was spending long hours with legal advisors, while others swore he was trying to negotiate with producers to cut certain footage before it aired. It didn't help that Bambi and Sierra were doubling down in their own way, making sure every public appearance, every Instagram live, and every interview contained just enough spice to keep the audience's appetite growing. When filming day arrived, the location was a high-end rooftop lounge overlooking the city. It was supposed to be a celebration scene, something light to balance out the heavy storylines, but everyone knew better. The seating chart alone had been designed for maximum impact. Kirk and Rasheeda were placed directly across from Bambi and Sierra with only a small floral arrangement between them. From the start, the tension was thick. The cameras captured every darting glance, every forced smile. At first, the conversation circled around safe topics: mutual friends, fashion, the weather. But it was only a matter of time before the spark hit the powder. Sierra was the first to break the unspoken agreement to keep it civil. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table, her tone casual, but her words loaded. "You ever notice how the truth has a way of showing up at the worst possible time?" Bambi smirked, adding, "Or maybe it's the best possible time, depending on who you ask." Kirk's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "You two really think you're clever, huh? Playing these little games for attention?" "Games?" Sierra shot back, her voice cutting through the background chatter. "This isn't a game. This is years of watching someone pretend to be one thing in public while doing something else entirely in private." Rasheeda shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Kirk before speaking. "This isn't the time or the place." But Bambi interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Actually, it's exactly the time and the place. You've been walking around acting untouchable, and now you're finally going to feel what it's like when people stop protecting you." The crew was silent, hanging on every word. Even the background music from the lounge seemed to fade into nothing. Kirk leaned back in his chair, trying to project control, but his hands were clenched tightly in his lap. Then Sierra reached for her phone. The motion was slow, deliberate, and every eye at the table followed it. She tapped the screen, scrolled briefly, and then turned it toward Bambi. The two women exchanged a look that was part satisfaction, part warning. Kirk's voice was low, but there was no hiding the edge. "If you think you can spin whatever's on that phone into something real, you're going to regret it." Bambi didn't flinch. "It's not about spinning anything. It's about letting people see who you really are." Rasheeda finally stepped in, her tone sharper now. "Enough. You're not about to sit here and act like you know everything that goes on in our lives." "We don't just know," Sierra said, her voice steady. "We can prove it." That was the line that sent the internet into chaos once the clip leaked. Fans began speculating wildly. What could be so serious that both Bambi and Sierra would risk putting it on national television? Some believed it was infidelity, others claimed it was tied to business deals, and a few whispered about an incident from years ago that had never made it to air. In the days that followed, Kirk's camp reportedly scrambled to do damage control. Anonymous sources claimed he was reaching out to mutual friends, trying to convince them to distance themselves from Bambi and Sierra. Meanwhile, the two women seemed completely unfazed, posting glamorous photos together with captions like, "Patience is power," and "The truth doesn't need defending." Then came the next teaser trailer, and it was even more explosive than the last. The footage opened with Kirk standing, pointing directly at Bambi and Sierra, his voice raised. "You don't know the whole story," he shouted. Bambi shot back, instantly. "We know enough to end this for you." The screen cut to Sierra in a confessional, looking directly into the camera. "The next time we sit at a table together, he's not walking away the same man." That single line was enough to send fan theories into overdrive again. People began pulling old clips from past seasons, trying to connect dots, arguing over whether this was all for ratings or if Kirk was truly facing the kind of scandal that could end his career. Behind the scenes, the mood on set had shifted completely. Even cast members who usually avoided drama were now quietly taking sides. Some avoided filming with Kirk altogether, while others kept interactions strictly professional, worried about the fallout. Producers, sensing they had a season-defining storyline on their hands, reportedly ordered extra shoots to capture reactions from as many angles as possible. In one of those extra confessionals, Bambi summed up her position in a way that instantly went viral. People love to say we're messy, but sometimes messy is the only way to clean up a bigger mess. Kirk, on the other hand, seemed to be running out of moves. The once confident, unshakable figure was now visibly frustrated in scenes, snapping at minor comments and avoiding direct eye contact with Bambi and Sierra. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone could see it. The night before the next filming, Sierra went live on Instagram. Thousands tuned in within seconds, flooding the comments with demands for the receipts. She didn't give specifics, but she did say one thing that stuck with viewers. When the truth comes out, don't say we didn't warn you. And just like that, the countdown to Kirk's reckoning continued, each day adding more pressure, more speculation, and more eyes watching to see if this was truly the beginning of the end. And that's where things stand right now. Two women, holding the kind of power that could flip Kirk's entire world upside down, and a growing audience that's counting down the seconds until they finally decide to unleash it. The energy around this story isn't fading, it's building. Every clip, every cryptic post, every side eye caught on camera is feeding into something bigger, something that could rewrite the way people see not just Kirk, but everyone connected to him. So the question is, when the next episode drops, are we about to watch the biggest reality TV takedown in years, or will Kirk somehow pull off a miracle and turn it all around? No matter which way it goes, one thing's for sure. The fallout will be unforgettable, and the lines between friend and foe have never been more blurred. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Bambi and Sierra are bluffing for drama, or do they really have the kind of proof that could end Kirk's career for good? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'll be reading every single one of them. While you're here, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single update. Trust me, you're going to want to be here when the truth finally drops.